I would like to tell you why you should invest in a B250 chipset motherboard at this point instead of an H110. Aside from the fact that maybe not everybody needs a DisplayPort connector on the motherboard for a 4K monitor, it's due to the fact that an H110M motherboard, which is even at this point the cheapest one to get, doesn't guarantee you that it will support the best budget gaming CPU at this day, and that is the Pentium G4560. There are some cases when subscribers told me that they bought the G4560 with an H110M motherboard for the best bang for the buck possible, and it worked perfectly fine. The motherboard recognized the CPU, and they could use their computers without any problems. But this is not always the case, so it's basically a lottery, and if you decide to pair a Pentium G4560 with an H110M, you take a risk in the case where the motherboard, the H110M, doesn't come with the latest BIOS update, with the latest BIOS version. For the Asus motherboard, for this particular model, which is very popular, in order to support the CPU, it has to have the BIOS version 3016. So at this point I could use the Pentium with it, because I've updated its BIOS, but when I had the Core i3-6100 installed on it. If I would have purchased the motherboard without that BIOS version, with the older ones like 1800 or 2003, I would not be able to install the Pentium on it. If you want, you can ask the seller to update the BIOS for you, but this will increase the cost of the H110M motherboard, and it will be very close to the B250M one. I've also managed to buy the B250M from Gigabyte at a discount. I've spent around $85 US on it. Depending on where you live, the prices will vary, and maybe I'm sure you'll find it at even lower prices. You get so much more from it. Not to mention that at this point you will already make a great save by purchasing the Pentium G4560 instead of i3-6100 or i3-7100, for instance, and you will get almost identical performance. The performance is really similar, as you can see from YouTube videos. The difference in performance, as I've said it before in my other video, is just of around 5 FPS. If you will put a better GPU on your system with that money saved, you'll be able to use, say, instead of going with an i3 and an H110M motherboard, you'll be able, for the same price, to get this Pentium and this B250M motherboard, and you'll spend even less. And the difference between these two motherboards regarding the features, there is really, they cannot be compared. You have here the double amount of RAM supported, 64 gigabytes instead of 32, 4 RAM slots instead of 2. You also have way much more SATA connectors, so you have 6 3.0 instead of 4. You have the M.2 SSD support for read speeds up to 3000 megabytes, and write speeds even 2000 megabytes instead of a regular SSD for this one. And also, as I tell you what was the reason I bought it, you can use this motherboard and hook up a 4K monitor to it without needing to install a GPU, so you won't have to spend extra money on that. On this motherboard you cannot use a 4K monitor at 60 Hz, it's really impossible. So since you will make a great saving, you'll spend half on the CPU right now as you would have done last year on an i3. The performance will be equal, and also the Pentium G4560 will run perfectly fine, will be recognized on a B250M motherboard. If in the past I didn't had such a great experience with the Gigabyte GPUs, I owned a GTX 1060 and found out that all their GTX 1000 lineup are very cheaply assembled and can come with a grinding noise on their fans when they start to spin. I cannot say the same thing about the Gigabyte motherboards. They are really top-line motherboards. So I've owned one in the past, and everything really worked flawlessly. Everything worked really perfectly fine. Even the smart fans, everything was perfectly fine. One inconvenience I had with the Asus motherboard was just regarding this thing, the optimization for the fans to spin at the lowest possible speed. Because of a bad code written in the program, when I tried to optimize the fans of the case for the lowest RPMs, the motherboard would have made them to spin at the top speed. So I had to uninstall the utility drivers for the motherboard and reinstall them without optimizing the case fans, and just by doing that I was able to get them back to spin at an acceptable RPMs. On the Gigabyte model, even on the older B250M one that I used to have, there were no problems whatsoever, and I'm sure there will be none on this either. So if you want to buy at this point the best budget gaming PC, or to make a multimedia system, I would definitely go for the Pentium G4560 and the B250M-D3H motherboard from Gigabyte, or any other B250M motherboard, whichever you find suitable for your needs, and of course whichever you find the cheapest in your country. I wish you all the best.